All right. Welcome everyone to our midday stack up here. And my name is Charlie O'Donnell, and I have a really exciting session. Emily Kramer here is here to share some knowledge, and we're here to do some work, actually. Naomi's going to help us out. She's got her screen shared. What we're doing is actually producing a deliverable. So if you've ever been to a panel before where you've got, or an interview, you've got some talking heads and they're just kind of yammering on, and you've got your notepad, and at the end of the day, you don't really have much written down. This isn't going to be that. This is going to be some meaty stuff. There's going to be a document that's a deliverable at the end, and we're going to try and cover it as much as possible. If we don't, we'll, kind of finish it on our own after and make sure it goes out to everyone. But just for context, so I invest at Brooklyn Bridge Ventures in super early stage businesses across a wide variety of areas, consumer, B2B, and there's always a question of what to do when, right? You've got companies that are pre-launch, pre-product, some doing a little revenue, entrepreneurs that don't want to overspend at the wrong things at the wrong time. They want to level set. They want to make sure they're doing the best practice that's appropriate to the stage. And that's not always easy, right? Different companies approach things different ways. And so what we decided to do, and to sort of make this into a little bit of a series, if this one goes well, and I appreciate Emily being the guinea pig for this, is to walk through each stage and every function, let's say, marketing or PR or tech or whatever, and kind of start to identify, how things should look at each stage of the company. So, and we're going to go on team, what tools people should be using, the processes, and all of that sort of stuff. So before we dive into that, Emily, could you give us a quick intro as to what you've been doing and what you're up to now?
Yeah, for sure. So I've led marketing teams at a number of startups, always being like the first or second marketer, but joining at various different stages. So I was at Ticketfly, and then I was at Asana as the first marketer when they were around Series B. And then I was there for 4 years leading the team, went to a seed funded startup, helped them raise their A, leading marketing and ops. And then I was at Carta, but I joined at 300 people to kind of scale out the marketing team in double time, because they didn't have a marketing team at the time, just a large sales team. So I've kind of seen this build out marketing team process, both kind of all the way through this chart in one place at Asana, and have seen various pieces of it in other places. And then now I both invest and advise mostly early stage startups, seed and A, and investing through Series B for advising on building marketing functions. So I've probably worked with 50 plus companies in the last year and a little bit since I've been doing this. And most of the conversations I have are around who do I hire and when, and what should they focus on? So I have this conversation usually one column of this conversation multiple times a day.
Awesome.
So excited to do it.
Cool. So we're going to walk through it. Naomi's going to take notes here, and obviously we'll have the recording. So if we have to go back. Okay. So I have a beta product, maybe, and I think the assumption is that each of these stage that the company has raised a sort of appropriate amount of capital, right? So we're not assuming that somebody's raised $20 million in a seed pre-launch, maybe they've got some angels, friends and family, couple of seed, pre-seed funds, but a small amount, and I haven't launched yet, right? So I know what my product is. Maybe I've got a few beta testers. So let's talk about staffing, right? Because right now, all I have is I'm a founder. I probably don't come from a marketing background, and I've got some product and tech, not much else. So, and I'm getting an inbox full of marketing, branding agencies, all of this sort of stuff. So like before launch, is there anything for me to do in the marketing function? Should I put anybody on it?
It's probably largely you as a
Okay.
founder. There might be some contractors on the website, but it doesn't typically make sense to hire someone pre-launch unless marketing, marketing is going to be a huge driver. Like maybe it's a product-led growth business, or you're building up a huge wait list, or communities are really important. So I think it's the exception that you would hire someone pre-launch, but sometimes it is the case. And so the contractors that might be needed here, and I think we can cover this here. The things that you're going to need to do at launch. So maybe we should just jump. Yeah, no, we can stay here. The things you're going to need to do, like pre-launch, you're obviously going to need to have a website. It doesn't need to be perfect, but it should probably explain what you do, why it's better, and who it's for. If you're in,
so I have a question about that specifically, actually.
Yep.
So what you do, why it's for, and I run into this all of the time, where founders who maybe experience the need for a product firsthand, I find, don't always know how to communicate it.
Yes.
And the language and all of that sort of stuff. Have you seen, or would you advise somebody to just actually help with the language and what words go on the website, how you describe a product?
Yeah, so in theory, that would be great if you could hire amazing product marketing contractors who could write your website copy. But in actuality, this early on, that's almost more work than trying to do it yourself and having, potential customers or other people in your network review it, because it's just really hard to find at any stage right now. It's really hard to find amazing
product marketers
that can also do web copy. So if you just go out and hire, the mistake I see a lot of people make is they go out and they hire a copywriter. Copywriter doesn't have a messaging and positioning framework. They don't deeply understand your audience, your product, what you're trying to do.
Gotcha.
And so they just write copy that doesn't really work. So I actually think sometimes I see it's successful if a founder writes the copy and then they have, say, a copywriter or someone edit it, which seems kind of backwards. But the big thing here is like, you as a founder need to figure out how to articulate what it is, why it's better, who is it for, and hopefully you did that in your pitch deck. But the other thing here to remember is like, you're not shipping your pitch deck. Your pitch deck's for investors. Unless you're targeting investors with your products, like you're speaking to a different audience. So you need to adapt it a little bit.
Gotcha. So one of the things that I don't know whether we'll add this into, let's put this in feel for now, is that one thing you said about sharing with customers is that like, it's got to feel all of your activities close to the customer, right? Like if you have,
yes,
a couple of friendlies or something like that to say, hey, this is the draft of my website. Do you get what's going on here? Like you need people who are potential buyers, but also friendlies. That's sort of where you're going there.
Exactly. Like you need to use your audience to guide what you're doing in the product, of course, but also what you're doing in marketing. And I think that piece sometimes gets lost. I love conversations with founders when they're about to launch, when they're like, hey, Emily, can we take 30 minutes and like, can you just go through our website copy with me? It doesn't happen that often, but when it happens, I'm like, that's a great way to use people in your network or even investors, even if they're not marketers. Like, do you understand what this does? Like, and even if they're not in your audience, it's still, do you understand what this does? So it's hilarious how many websites just, you have no idea.
Well, and then I think the other thing too is sometimes everybody uses the same language to sound impressive, but it just winds up all sounding like the same exact thing.
Yeah. We could do a whole session just on this, but it's like, kill the buzzwords, speak like a human, make it understandable, and don't try to be fancy. Just what is it? Who's it for? Why is it better?
Yeah, that's perfect. To speak like a human in terms of feel too. That's super.
You don't need to make the world's best website, but it does need to explain what you do. And on the design side, it needs to make you look legit. And my strong recommendation, this is in tools, but my strong recommendation is just to use Webflow. What often also happens is founders build custom code things because they have engineers on the team, but you're going to need to update this all the time. And it is not a great use of engineers' time who are trying to build out the product. So get a good Webflow template, change out the colors to be your color palette, include your fonts. You can do it in a day. I mean, maybe not the copy, but you can build it out in a day. I know how to do it. I'm not technical. You can do it too.
Gotcha.
So it's so crazy how often people like try to reinvent the wheel with their website and build all these crazy things. It's like, there's so many Webflow templates. Go buy one, customize it, call it a day.
Nice. I feel like we should have had a discount code there to add. So next time we'll get Webflow.
Yeah, they've sent me swag before because I wrote a newsletter just being like, just use Webflow. Like, stop. No offense to all the headless CMSs out there, you know, all that, but like, you know, it's just easier. And marketers are, when you get a marketer in, it is going to save them a lot of time. So people still won't, founders still won't listen on this point, but you know, at least if I save one marketer in the future from having to come into a custom coded website, I've done my job for the day.
Nice. So let's talk about planning for a second, because one of the determinations we were sort of talking about is do you need momentum at launch? Like, is this the kind of product, like how much marketing you need to be doing right now is kind of a function of like, are you going to need to hit the ground running a little bit? And I feel like some people feel, for better or worse, like they need a big launch, like they need to they have a window of opportunity to make an impact, to tell their story on the market. So first of all, just ask you just a quick question on just launches. Do you agree? Like, how important do you think a launch is?
Yeah, at the like pre-beta phase, or at the or in this column or the next column, or are we kind of combining columns here?
The line, actually, like literally, like,
okay.
I haven't told the world about myself yet, and now I'm going to. Does that need to be a big day?
Yeah, it always depends on what you're doing. I would say there's different reasons and different goals of the launches depending on what your business model is. If you are, you know, a company that's trying to get like 5 beta customers that has a large ACV that's going after a very specific audience, you obviously want there to be some credibility. And so you're doing the launch for credibility and that like stamp of approval. Whether that's a huge moment or whether that's a blog post sharing your investors and sharing your vision that you're sharing and your investor network is sharing, or, you know, if you're able to get, you know, a TechCrunch announcement on your launch, which is highly dependent on having a vision and like a contrarian point of view or a unique take. Like, fundraising news is not enough. I see companies that have raised from amazing investors, top tier investors, amazing roster of angels and other people, and they can't get press. And that's because they're just announcing their fundraising news. And
it's just a money story.
Yeah, money is the hook, the reason to get the story or the timing to get the story, but there needs to be a story. Money's not the story. So you have to say, like, what am I trying to do here? If you're a consumer product or a product-led growth product, low ACV, high volume, like, it's helpful to have a launch that feels bigger, that you know, put on Product Hunt. You do have that story. You push really hard on your network. You push hard on your community. You build up a wait list, like whatever that might be. It's highly dependent. And in that situation, it might be helpful to, you know, at least have a contractor or potentially even bring a full-time person in before this point to help you execute on all of these things and make sure it's a well-coordinated launch.
Gotcha. So actually we'll add to team for launch, you know, or contractor to help with launch. And then we'll sort of figure out, like, you know, what that person might be. Yeah. So even sometimes before launch, you're going out, you're fundraising, some investors will ask for your go-to-market plan. Mm-hmm. And which I always kind of find a little bit funny, because I don't feel like everybody's go-to-market plan is that different from everybody else. I mean, maybe there's some unique insight, but I think my question would be, if I'm the type to say, yeah, I do want to lay out the next year or so of what am I going to do marketing wise. Is that, one sheet of bullets and look, it's going to change later? Like, how much planning can actually be done at this stage?
Yeah, I think the most important thing to do, I use this analogy a lot. Like there's all these areas of marketing and it can get really confusing to think about all the sub functions and what all the words mean. And the words we use to describe things change all the time within marketing because marketers are marketing. But I use this analogy of like, you have fuel for marketing, which is like your messaging, your positioning, your content, your design. It's the fuel. Makes sense. And then there's your engine, which is like what you're doing on the growth and demand gen side, and what's going to get that fuel out into the world. So you should have a general plan of like, what do I think my fuel is going to be? And that could be like, we're going to make content on this, or we're going to have some really amazing templates. It doesn't have to be like, written content per se. It could be that we're going to run, a bunch of talks, or we're going to have a bunch of talks with experts. What is your hunch on what the best fuel for your audience is?
What are people going to want to consume? How do they want to hear from us?
Exactly. And then think about, what's my engine going to be? Is it going to be outbound? Is it going to be with and sharing this fuel with outbound? Like your fuel can't be like, we're going to ask people to request a demo. Like that's not fuel. So it could be outbound. It could be that we're going to be, having an inbound strategy, in which case we're going to rapidly build up SEO and we're going to use SEM to augment that in the meantime. Like, what is your fuel and what's your engine? And you need to have doesn't mean what's your fuel and what's your engine forever. It means what's your fuel and your engine to get to whatever your goal is for whether that be number of customers or whether that be revenue or whatever that be, or whether that be sign up. Yeah.
Cool. Super helpful. Okay, to go back to tools for a moment before we move on to the next stage, because I feel like there's probably not a lot of process and documentation at this stage.
Yeah.
But instrumenting, tracking, and this is more, I guess, leading up into a launch. What is sort of the earliest bits, and then maybe you can tell me what column they go in, the earliest bits of marketing platform? Do you Google Analytics, HubSpot? Like, how early should I start thinking about track tools and all of that sort of stuff?
Yep. My take on this is you're going to need to be, you need to track your web traffic from the day it's up. So just get Google Analytics up and running. You can switch off of it and do something better, or pull that into other tools that you're using in the future. But get Google Analytics. It's free. And then make sure you connect it to Search Console. Super minor thing, but you have to get better search data. Like you have to connect it to Search Console. It's super minor, but people don't realize they have to do this. And
Search Console being how do I know what people are searching when they get to my site, so you can start to track SEO?
Yeah, it's another Google product essentially, but you have to connect the two together. And why you have to do that, I don't know why they just won't do it for you, but you just have to connect them. You just Google it, how to connect Search Console to Analytics, done. And then on the marketing automation side, you're going to have to send out emails at launch or around launch. Like you're going to want to also start to have some sort of CRM. So depending on what you're doing on the sales side, I think it can make sense to start with HubSpot pretty early because you're going to need it. And so you're not doing the complete setup, but if you just start using that to send out emails and stuff, then you don't have to switch tools. The other option I recommend, and there's like lightweight versions of HubSpot. It's not super expensive at the beginning. It gets much more expensive over time, but like at the beginning, it's pretty cost effective. I mean, I also see people use like other email tools in the beginning, like ActiveCampaign and things like that. And like my general take is like, just get on HubSpot. Don't do the full build out, but it's going to help you in the future be able to track, target, etc., different audience segments, and you're going to need it. So the other thing I'll say is like sometimes you can get by using Intercom at the beginning for emails too. So you can use it for chat on your website. You can use it for emails. You can use it for support. So if you have like one person leading all of ops, sometimes Intercom, no offense to Intercom, but it's like mediocre at a lot of things, which makes it sometimes the best because you can,
at least for this stage.
for this stage,
Right.
because it does a lot of things, right? And
Founders need to realize that in the early stages that the company is going to be mediocre at a lot of things at this stage.
right, like it's not the best tool for customer support teams. It's not the best tool for marketing automation, but like the fact that it does all of these things is a really big win and can like help you track all of your customers in one place is really helpful when you have like literally one person on the business or ops side. So,
and by the way, to go back to the being close to the customer aspect, if there ever was a stage where you want people to just drop in a chat note and start a conversation, like this is probably the stage, because there's
yes,
probably confusing questions, or somebody's going to want to see, like, hear a human at this stage.
yes, you want to be accessible through any channel and every channel. So maybe it's like accessible. Yeah.
Cool.
Cool. All
right, so we've got that's awesome. We're pre-launch, leadership, I mean, that's kind of like founder.
Yeah.
Are advisors useful? What's your take on, like, I'll give a quick take actually, because you seem to be someone who advises, but you have a shtick. Like you do this, right? Like you have specifically set out, you created a brand around it. You seem to have a thing that you do, which I think, look,
I
some
try to
people
have a
are
thing
good
that I
at
do.
that.
Yeah, my goal.
Yeah, some people are good at it, some people not. You might not be good at it. You seem competent, but like I always worry a little bit when people pull advisors who don't advise regularly,
Yeah.
and they don't have a thing. And I think the founders often don't know how to be advised either. And so they get all excited about bringing somebody on, and like nothing comes of it.
Yeah. Like, so I have a small fund now, but over the last year and a half, me and my business partner, Kathleen, like we mainly advised. And so, yeah, we have a very, very clear things we do. We even have like workshops we do with founders, like we're on specific things, like whether that be positioning or mapping out your funnel or whatever it is, like we have a plan, because the thing is founders don't often understand marketing. So yeah, like if you don't do it and this isn't something you do and it's like you advise this one company on the side from your regular job, I don't think you're going to be as effective. But there are lots of people that kind of do the like advising and angel investing thing full time. So, I'm not saying all of those people are totally legit, but I think it is helpful. And that's also, like there's not that much difference between what I do when we write either large angel checks or invest through our fund, like invest, a six figures amount of money, and what we do when we advise. Advising can be a little more in depth, depends on the arrangement, but we're doing similar things. So you can also check this box by having angel investors who are marketers, which, I can always help you with.
Nice.
Whether it's not me, I know a lot of marketers who are angel investors. So I think whether it be an advisor or angel investors in this area, it's helpful to have someone to go to bounce ideas off of and bounce what you're doing off of. And it's probably easier to bring those in as angels. The other thing there is like larger VC firms are not super helpful on marketing. Like they can say that they're going to be, but they're just not. They don't have the experience. And it's a pretty specific thing to be able to do this well. So especially starting from scratch. So get someone on your cap table that knows how to do this and invest in a lot of companies. Get an advisor that knows how to do this. But don't forget about that when you're raising, because I think it's easy to forget about this when you're raising, especially if you're an engineer as a founder. You just forget, oh, I'm really going to need marketing help. And then you have to go get an advisor, which is like an expensive thing to do in the way of equity. So get angel investors who are marketers if you need help with that. Gotcha.
Well, one thing I'll add to this is peers.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily have to be on your cap table, but I do think it's helpful in the startup world to have a group of people that you can connect to for best practices, whatever, who are just like 1 or 2 steps ahead of you, who were there at your stage, who can tell you what they did that worked, didn't work, and all of that sort of stuff. But just be able to ask a quick question like, hey, what do you use for X? Or have you run into this, weird Google Analytics issue today or whatever?
Yeah. The one thing to caveat there though is like different business models, even within B2B, like B2B and B2C obviously different, but even within different business models and B2B, like there's very different needs. So you have to recognize that like marketing is not like a playbook thing. It might seem like it's a framework thing, but it's not a playbook thing. You can't take one company's playbook. You should make your own playbook, but you can't take one company's playbook and plug and play it into your business. Doesn't work.
Right. So we will make sure we call this a framework and not a playbook.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So are there any, before we move on, are there any particular metrics like super early that you think, I guess signups might be one if it's appropriate?
You got to figure out what your most important growth metric is. At this point in time, you're not going to have like qualified leads like you're going to have later, because that involves lead scoring and a bunch of complicated things. But whether this is meetings booked or signups, if you're sort of a free product, PLG product, something tangible.
Gotcha.
But know what it is and know what you're going after.
Gotcha. All right.
Yep.
So now we got a product. We've launched it. We had a team who, or a consultant or one-off person to help us. It is out in the market. I got a couple customers who like it. So there's some product market fit there, and I need more of that, and I don't know how to do that regularly. So I'm sort of pre-wheel but launched. How early do you recommend people hire full-time for marketing?
Yeah, to me, it's typically like, and again, I'm talking like normal size brands. It's typically late seed or early A. And how does this relate to this? Typically, it's like you have done everyone always talks about like founder-led sales. Like you've done some founder-led marketing. Like you've gone out, you've talked to customers, you have a general sense of like what's needed. Maybe you have kind of a sense of what your fuel might be and what your engine might be. Then you can think about going out and hiring a marketer. You can't just go hire a marketer when you have no idea what you're going to do in marketing, because marketers have specialties. Now, there are some marketers who are generalists who know how to do product marketing, growth marketing, /demand gen, and content marketing really well. Few and far between. Most of them are not looking for jobs at really early stage startups, because they've done that before. That's how they gained all that experience. So you have to have some idea of who is going to be most helpful to your business to hire for marketing.
Gotcha. Because otherwise you'll wind up with a hammer and nail situation.
Yeah, you're just gonna, or you're gonna end up with someone. The other thing to do is like, again, this is like a whole hour-long conversation, maybe longer, but specialists at this point in time are also not what you want. You want someone that like spikes in a couple of areas of marketing, but you still need to figure out where those spikes are. Hiring like just an SEO person is not what you should do here. Even if you think SEO is going to be your bread and butter, you hire contractors for specialties, and you hire people who spike in a couple of areas and can kind of operate across marketing, but you've got to know what areas they spike in.
Gotcha. So first hire is a generalist.
Yeah. But even generalists have some specialties or something.
Right. Yeah. And then, but I think the key point here is that it's post founder led marketing.
Yeah. You have, yes. And
Gotcha.
like, it's also important to say, what are we going to be what do I think we need to do at a high level? Like, you're not expected to be a marketer as a founder. Some ways you are, but you're not expected to know all of the specific details, but you need to have a sense of what are we going to be doing for the next year? Like, what do I think is going to drive growth, and kind of hire for someone that understands that model or what they're doing. So with a sense of where the person spikes or something like that.
Gotcha.
Or your high level marketing plan or something like that.
Okay. So specialists for contractors, super helpful. So I don't think the feel is quite different yet.
I would say the only difference in feel is that you're close to customers, but you're trying to get a sense for when you're ready to like fully step on the gas. Like you're looking for signs of like product market fit or channel, or like this channel is working. So I don't know what that is, but you're looking for that inflection point.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Looking for inflection points. That's super.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Tools probably similar.
Tools very similar, but like even more so, like if you didn't bother to do like the CRM/marketing automation situation earlier on, like you've got to have that now. You might want to like slightly up level your website at this point. You also might want to like, again, depending on your business model, you might want to think about optimizing your like sign up or request demo flows. So you might want to like make sure your forms are a little better structured for conversion, things like that, because you're not going to be doing as much hand holding at this point to get people as customers. Whereas earlier on, like a lot of your customers, you're going to know them or get intro to them. And so at this point, yeah.
Gotcha. I have a question actually about content, and people are trying to figure out what works. How much of an investment do you think people should be doing in particular areas? Let's say I'm like, hey, I kind of think it would be interesting if we put out some white papers and maybe I'm making up stuff, like maybe did a podcast or whatever. Like in each of those things, you kind of, I think, have to learn how to get good at them.
Yeah.
So how long should I go with my, bi-weekly white papers that are like not getting any pickup, or my podcast that's not getting any traction? Like, how long should I commit to some of these channels?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, I think the key here, first of all, like I've never heard like interesting and white paper used in a sentence before. But that's just one woman's opinion. But I know what you mean, like a research data piece or whatever. I like to talk shit about white papers all the time.
Yeah, sure.
But like a data study or a research piece or whatever that might be. Look, like two things here. This isn't what you asked, but like SEO is going to be a factor in every single business. Like search, it might not be huge, but search is always going to be a channel. And the earlier you can start producing content or creating landing pages that are going to rank for things relevant to, so if someone is searching for exactly what you do, they need to be able to find you. And so that has to be like some of priority on the content, whether that be a landing page or a blog post, or again, like a template or a resource. Like you have to start that out earlier. So you've got to kind of have a plan for how am I going to make sure when someone's searching for this exact thing, they find us. And
is there anything more than Search Console on the SEO side that you recommend people check out?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of tools. Like there's lots of them. There's like Moz and there's Ahrefs and all this stuff. There's lots of tools, right? So it can be helpful to do basically some general keyword research and say like, here are the keywords we're going to be targeting, and let's sort of have a plan for which page or which blog post we're trying to rank for each of those terms. So at this point, you probably should have done some very basic keyword research. You can probably get away, sorry to these companies, with like the 30-day free trial, do some research. And so maybe this goes under tools. It's like keyword research tool. You can probably get away with like the 30-day free trial, get some research, and then, pay for it later if you're strapped for cash. But on the other types of content piece, the thing about, this isn't working, or this type of content, we good?
Yeah.
Okay. The thing about like this type of content isn't working is that content is only as good as the distribution. So content is fuel, and you need to make sure you have an engine for it. So if you're not spending effort to distribute it, whether that be through communities, whether that be through, you have a newsletter that people subscribe to, or you're doing, even driving paid traffic to your content, whatever that might be, like if you're not doing the distribution piece, like you can't decide if it's working or not working. But it's not worth it to create all of this time-consuming content if you're not thinking about the distribution plan too. So I think you have to evaluate, like, are we actually distributing this? Are we capable of distributing this? If you're not, don't create it right now unless it's SEO. It's kind of like, like how are people going to find this? Who's going to care? I think that answers the question for now.
Cool. All right. Is there anything below process and documentation? Oh, leadership. So, in terms of the this first hire, I feel like there's always a question of the seniority level of that person and what you ideally have seen them do. It's like, on one hand, I could sort of go ambitious and junior, or I could go senior, but maybe not willing to roll up sleeves. And I feel like a lot of companies get caught in the middle.
Well, the middle might be where you want to be. Here, my general take on this is, assuming the founder is not a marketer or super savvy on marketing, which is the assumption in general here. You want someone who understands how to set strategy across all of marketing. Maybe they don't know how to do all the things, but they understand how to strategically say, like, here's where we're going to focus, here's where we're going to prioritize, but also can comfortably do the work in a couple of areas. Whether that be they can do the product marketing, messaging, copywriting, they can execute on different growth channels themselves and understand how those work, or whether that be they're an amazing writer and content strategist. Like, they need to be able to do some things themselves and set that strategy overall. So I would say, in summary, you want to hire someone who can set strategy overall, but is also scrappy enough to do the work. If you feel like you have a really strong sense of what marketing is going to be, you can go a little more junior at first, and maybe they're not setting the strategy across the board, but like, if there's a strategy already, that's possible. The too senior problem is a huge problem. You do not necessarily want you don't want someone that has only led marketing at a large organization. They're going to come in and not know what to do and not want to get their hands dirty, and they're going to be bored because of it. You need someone who's comfortable getting in the weeds. So preferably, this is like a person that has seen fast growth before, maybe not in the super early stages, but they've worked at, a growth stage startup at least. They haven't necessarily been the person leading marketing there. They've maybe been reporting to a head of marketing or reporting to someone who reports to a head of marketing. And they have experience with your business model, I find, is the most important thing, because the tactics are much different if you're doing a top-down sales motion versus bottom-up motion versus B2C, versus marketplace. Like, someone with business model experience is really important.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So, quick question before we move on to the next category. Because we've identified some key growth metrics, at least, and those are some of the key growth metrics that conceivably, those, if they turn up, that's an indication of a flywheel, right? So figuring out which metric would be like, this is the metric that if it started to get a lot better, predictably, I would lean into marketing budget.
Yeah, exactly. So, but there's more things here too. Like, at this point, you need to be looking at web traffic on a regular basis. It's a good indicator of just like awareness and all of that. So you need to be looking at web traffic, not just on your website, but across your blog, all of that.
Socials.
Yeah, I mean, depending on how important social is. For some companies, social just isn't that important, and it's not going to be a main driver. But if it's social, you also want to start looking at conversion rates throughout the funnel. You want to look at conversion rate from the website to filling out a form, whether that be a sign up or a demo. You want to look at conversion rate from then having that demo or signing up for the product to being a paid customer, and all the steps in between, but those vary. Like, you've got to start looking at conversion rates. So then your levers are like improve conversion rate or improve volume or increase volume at the top of the funnel. So you have multiple levers. So you want to kind of look at what's happening. You also should know at this point, the sources of traffic, where people are coming from, what channels they're coming from. You can still do this in Google Analytics, but you want to start to get a sense of like, how are people finding out about us? Where are they coming from? So yeah, at this point, web traffic, sources, volume, conversion rates, social, if that's something that you're focused on. And yeah, that's.
I have a team and leadership question, and this is maybe more of sort of related to founders. If I am a product focused founder, a technical founder, somebody who at this stage of the game, there might not be a VP of engineering. I might be sort of doing part-time sort of on that team, maybe even still coding. And maybe don't have a necessarily what I would call a traditional business background. I often find that there are some founders who partner up with somebody who is like generally businessy, maybe a co-founder, maybe not, but definitely like second in command, not equal co-founder, if at all a co-founder, sometimes not. That this person sometimes marketing will essentially report into. And do you think that founders who are product oriented just like need to bite the bullet and get their hands dirty in marketing more so than they may be comfortable with, and less outsourcing it to my, businessy person who is also like bookkeeping and all this sort of stuff? Because that's just where marketing feels like it should go, and it's not coding.
Yeah. Again, like this comes back to how important is the founder story here? How much is the founder's story or the founder's network? Like how much is the founder playing a role in the success of this company, right? So if the founder is going to play a huge role in the story, especially early on, then marketing should remain close to the founder. If the founder is going to be pretty hands off, then I think it's fine, and sometimes even better, to have the marketer report to that businessy leader. Because they get what they're doing more. But I wouldn't layer the marketer like so far down in the organization. Like if that businessy leader isn't like almost a co-founder level, don't do it early on, because you're just gonna have a hard time hiring. I would say also like the worst thing you can do as a founder early on is like have marketing report into the business leader, but then have a ton of opinions like on marketing. Like if you are going to have them report to someone else, like you can have some opinions as founder, but like don't get in the day-to-day stuff, because then the person essentially has two bosses in a 10-person company, and that's really bad. So I think like the founder needs to decide, how involved are they going to be in marketing, and if the answer is very involved, keep marketing close.
Gotcha. And maybe a transition to our next column, our next stage here is, okay, so these metrics are starting to turn up. I want to pour some gas on this fire. Now, there might be some team building going on here, or maybe not. But the other question I have about that early marketer is, does it make sense to hire someone who has the capability of running a team, or is the assumption when you start to pour gas on the fire that eventually somebody's going to come in over them?
I think it's I think it's helpful to hire someone who the expectation is that they can lead the team for as long as they're capable of leading the team. And sometimes that goes really well. Sometimes you have to layer them sooner than you thought. But I think you're hiring people who haven't just been at early stage startups. They've been a little later and have that context. So I think like you really need to I think it's helpful to kind of not like have the constant like I'm going to layer you situation loom over their heads if they're doing a good job. Like
give somebody a shot.
You give someone a shot. So you're giving them a shot and they're making an effort to do it. And you got to have the realistic conversation that at some point having someone who's led marketing at scale is going to be helpful. But I don't really think it's at this point. I think that's more like after you hit that first $1 million in revenue, or after you even get to 5 or 10. So like sometimes it works out. Like when I joined Asana, I was the first marketer. I reported into a COO who like understood all the business and understood marketing pretty well. I'd led part of marketing before, but I just like kept on leading the team and was head of marketing for 4 years. And like that maybe doesn't happen that often, that someone's able to like stay for 4 years and lead the team, but it does happen. And, you know, people can grow in the role and they understand the audience and hire people that complement them and hire people that have more experience than them and be an effective leader. So yeah, I think you want to give the person a shot if you hire at the right seniority. If you don't quite hire at the right seniority, you know, just recognize that early on and say someone will come on in and you'll work with them.
Gotcha. So maybe in our team thing for this column, we'll put, early team members with management potential, or
yes, that's great, with team leadership potential. And like at this point, you probably are going to start to think about, you're going to have, 2 or 3 marketers at this point. And you definitely want a marketer that's on, back to the fuel engine analogy, you want a marketer who's good at fuel, and you want a marketer who's good at engine, you know what I mean? So you want to and whether that be like a product marketer, content marketing mix, or whatever that person looks like, and then what kind of growth marketer, demand gen person, depends, and which one leads the team, that doesn't matter as much. Depends on your business, but like you've got to have someone on the fuel side and someone on the engine side. And if you have 3 people, it tends.
That's a really good way of splitting that up.
Yeah, thanks.
It's helpful. I haven't heard people describe it that way, but yeah, like that makes a lot of sense. It's because writing and communication and production is very, very different than tools management.
Yep, and being analytical and optimizing. Yeah. So it's your more creative type, creative writing, all of that stuff, versus the analytical systems type thinker. So you got to have both of those. And then if you are going to have 3 people, it is helpful to have sort of someone on product marketing, someone that's like content or brand, or social community, like that whole side of things. And then growth / engine on the pure B2B.
Product marketing is something people may not be used to as a term. I feel like it has come up more in the last couple of years as sort of a separate functional area. What is product marketing in a way that like is not growth or brand? Yeah,
so product marketers in some ways like sit between the two, but product marketers, what they need to be good at is I think it's a misnomer. I actually think it should be called audience marketing in what we've meant it to mean. They need to deeply understand your audience, how to reach them, who they are, what's going to get their attention, all of that. And then understand how the product is relevant to them and how the product serves that audience's needs, and be an expert on the product. And then therefore they're an expert on like what channels might be best, what fuel might be best. And in that way they sit between content, brand, and growth. So cool. They're an expert on the audience and the product and how to reach them and with what and all of that. So that's my like simple way of thinking about product marketing.
So we're going to pour some fuel on this thing. And not fuel the way you meant fuel, but we're pouring gas on this fire, to use a different analogy, right? Yep. So at this point, when we feel like we know how to reach people, we know how to move the needle, let's scroll down and figure out what categories this should be in. I mean, first of all, like in terms of process, and maybe at this point, because it's a team and reporting, like check-ins, like team meetings, like how should that be set up?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, like you need to be setting goals that aren't just metrics goals that are like, but are also going to make room for, we're going to do these projects, we're going to do this foundational work to get these things in place. Like you're setting more comprehensive goals, and whether that be you're like an OKR company or a goals company, I don't care, but you're setting goals that are beyond just the metrics, that are like, we're going to, do this experiment, we're going to test this content type, we're going to test this channel. So
maybe in planning, we should be like our goals are evolving.
Yeah, your goals are evolving. You have more types of goals. And then I would say, yeah, like at this point, marketing you have like 3 people, they need to work together. Everybody needs to know what everybody else is doing. Like, so you're going to need to have some some variety of like a weekly sort of meeting to get everyone on the same page. I mean, potentially that can be asynchronous, but it's like really helpful to sort of make sure these sides, the fuel engine side, are connected, and that you're not just making things, but you're also distributing them out. And so there's people that need to talk to each other about this stuff and make sure you're coordinated. So you need to have a better sense of like, are we creating things that we're then getting to our audience and properly measuring whether they're working or not? So we're testing things and then we're knowing when to scale them. So maybe that's more on like process and documentation, which is like we're testing, figuring out what to test and what to scale. Mm-hmm. All right. You're muted, Charlie.
Sorry. Now that I'm starting to scale my team, put some real dollars behind this budget, how should my tools evolve?
Yeah.
What's the first thing to go?
The thing here is now you're going to be getting tools that I think are a little bit more specific to what's working. So there's not like everybody's going to have the same set of tools, but it might be that you at this point, like if you're a top-down sales organization, like you're doing a lot of outbound, like you're going to want to have something that's helping you build out lists and figure out who to reach out to. So whether that's like an Apollo is a newer company that does that, or like a Zoom Info or whatever it might be, like you're going to
have channel specific tools.
Yeah, channel specific tools. So maybe that's a better way to put it. You're gonna have channel specific tools, to help you build out this sort of engine. At this point in time, you're probably going to want to be tracking consistent metrics like all the way through the funnel. And so that is possible with HubSpot, but also especially if you're like a product-led growth model, you're going to need to marry product and marketing data. So that tends to be like you're using, a BI tool, or you have Segment in the mix, or you're like going to need to connect the dots on analytics, and that might require some engineering work. So
a few business intelligence tools.
Yeah.
Connecting product to marketing.
Or connecting sales to marketing, maybe it's just like connected analytics, or like full views into data, like
right,
all that stuff.
Would you say the feel is more about optimizing for spend and money, that all of a sudden the conversations, or not quite yet?
Not quite yet. The feel is more around we're trying to get to a place where we have repeatable, scalable things that work in marketing. So I don't know if it's the feeling, but it's kind of like we're testing and we're learning, or like we're getting ready to scale, or like we're hoping to be ready to scale. So gotcha. Yeah, you're starting to do less like little initiatives and starting to add sort of like process and rigor, and going less off of gut and like figuring out what to scale. So
gotcha. All right, let's do a quick up and down scroll to make sure we didn't miss anything. So we hopefully are upwardly mobile, generalist sort of, stepping up to the challenge here.
Yes.
How long before you what's the inflection point, would you say, in a business where you're like, either that person steps up or you need to hire somebody more senior? Is there a point where you sort of feel like that person needs to level up?
Look, like if they can't manage people outside of their functional area, like if you have 3 marketers in 3 different areas and one of the people like can't lead and effectively manage all of those areas of marketing, like then they're not the person. Like they need to be able to set strategy, like I said, and hire and lead people in other functional areas of marketing, like other sub-functions. So I guess it's like,
gotcha. So the ability to lead people outside your functional area is key.
Yes. And like set that strategy. So And at some point, like after 3 marketers, they can't all be reporting into the CEO. Even at 3, that's not great. You probably don't want more than 2 marketers reporting into the founder at this point. So you've got to get that person in place. So it's pretty soon, actually, where you kind of realize, is this person going to scale or are they not?
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep.
We can fill that in after the fact, but that was all good content.
Yep.
Okay, so some of the metrics are going to be specific to the product. And so now we're sort of starting to scale. Let's scroll back up and see what the next level up. I don't know if we're going to fully build out the $10 million plus,
Yeah, I
but
don't think we are.
if you're doing $10 million plus, you can pay Emily as a consultant. So that's the premium tier that will unlock in another.
That's a paid talk. Yeah. Okay, so call Emily.
So here's a question about like, so we've got 3 sort of marketers in different areas, and we're starting to build up scale. So this like $5 to $10 million is now I'm like prepping probably for a Series B.
Mm-hmm.
So what's a Series B VC likely to want to see, in a way maybe is not so much about like testing and guessing and learning and how does that organization like look and feel?
Yeah, you need to have repeatable channels that work, like repeatable, and you need to have some consistency. So it's repeatable channels that work. It's also like you have some sense of like what levers to pull to drive the business. So there's some, if we do this, we kind of know what's going to happen. Like input this, output's going to be roughly this. So
predictability.
That's the word I'm looking for. Thank you. That's the word. So some predictability, and also just, so there's some predictability, there's repeatable processes. Like it's clear that you can scale on the go-to-market side. Like it's clear that you can scale on the marketing side and continue to acquire customers, hopefully at a lower cost moving forward too. So like it's clear that you have an engine that works, and that you can, get to that next layer of revenue growth, or get to 10 million really is what's going to matter here.
Gotcha.
Yep.
If in fact, let's say my early first marketer was good and they're like doing like a really, really nice job, but I'm about to raise, $30 to $50 million in Series B, which may be sort of a really different animal. And I'm thinking of VP marketing, CMO, senior hire. I guess actually my question to you would be, if we're talking about that size and scale of budget, and it's, despite the early marketers like really, really good work, is there some point in which you're just like, there's just a level where you just need somebody that's done this before, spent that kind of money, that you need to level up?
I kind of see that happen more like after Series B, while you're on the path to Series C. And like in a lot of the companies where I work with marketing leaders, like that's the conversation that's happening in Series B. It's like, are you going to scale? So before that, it's kind of at Series B that then you go do that hire. Because look, at this point in time, like everybody is still doing a lot. They're still getting their hands dirty. You don't want someone that just comes in and just wants to lead and manage the team. But the big thing that the like head of marketing or the person that's managing the marketers needs to be able to do at this point is they need to be able to hire. Because now you're going from like a 3-person team to like, depending on the business model and how involved marketing is in driving that growth, like from like, 3 to maybe even 10, right? So you got to be able to hire, and hiring marketers is really hard right now. And I don't.
So let's put that in the leadership, like, and I think that category is becoming like qualities of leadership or what have you, is the ability to hire.
Ability to hire.
Leaders need to hire.
Yep. And so that's the big difference here. Like before you're hiring one or two other people, now and where I see marketers, that are great at what they do, really, I don't know, kind of not be able to scale is in this. Like, I don't like hiring. I don't know who to hire. I don't know how to interview. Like I see this a lot, and some people can be coached through it, but that's a key thing here. If you're going to be at a Series B company as a leader of a team, you're hiring. You're spending a ton of time hiring. You have to like it. You have to be able to like get candidates who want to work with you. So I think that's the most common attribute of like marketers that I know that have been heads of marketing, VPs, CMOs through growth stage. They're good at hiring and they like it.
Yeah, I mean, really that goes for any
yeah.
functional thing. Like, yeah, anything that you expect to be good at, you should probably like it. Plans. I feel like now we're in the sort of, plus $1 million, we got our flywheel going. We're not just week to week anymore on planning, are we?
No, we've got, and even before, I'm a big goal setting. I worked at Asana for 4 years, so I love a plan. I love a project. I loved it even before I joined Asana, which is why I joined Asana, and then it got worse. But yeah, you should have quarterly goals, and everyone on the team should know what their contribution to that is, and it shouldn't just be metrics.
So even in the category before, maybe the column before, quarterly goals.
Yeah, and maybe they're not as sophisticated, but it's like quarterly priorities,
Okay.
But now you should be very outcome based. And again, you don't just want these to be metrics based, because marketing needs to think about not only short-term growth, but also long-term growth. And if you just do metrics, almost like how sales operates, you're not going to be thinking about long-term growth. And so you've got to have goals around projects or initiatives or things that you're doing, whether that's like, we're going to hold a user conference or whatever it is. Yeah.
One way I'll add what you said is column or quarterly priorities. This is what we're trying to do. This is what we're focused on.
You're breaking up a little bit over there.
Can you hear me?
Now it's better. Yeah, you were like a robot. Yeah.
So maybe in the column before is quarterly priorities, like this is our focus for this quarter. And then the column after, as we're scaling, it's like outcome planning. Like we're aiming for this effort to result in a thing, and we should be pretty predictive about it.
Yes, exactly. So now it's predictable. So you're not just setting here are our priorities and things we're going to try. It's like, we're going to hit this goal because we did this.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's see, scroll up. Oh, we're really zipping through this. Team. I feel like it was sort of implicit in what you were saying, because at the beginning of this process, everybody's kind of doing a lot of things. As you build out team, are you basically taking like everybody who's doing 2 or 3 things and trying to take one of those things off of their plate and just hire a specific person to do it? So you're like hiring so that each person can do less things better?
Yes. So like, let's take like growth marketing, for example. Like they might have been doing some email stuff and some paid stuff, or maybe working with an agency on that and thinking about SEO and sort of managing the forms and conversion rate optimization and all of these things. And now you're going to say like, here are our most viable channels, or here's what's really working for us. And I'm going to hire a specialist in that. So it's moving from generalist to specialist.
Okay. So moving from specialist to generalist is sort of the key thing.
Generalist to specialist.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. From generalist to specialist.
Yeah.
Awesome. Anything, I feel like on the tool side, it really gets specific.
It's it's like kind of the same thing, but I would say like in every phase here, like the thing that I think people don't realize is like, there's a lot of up leveling that needs to happen on the data analytics, tooling side of things. Like so at this point, and probably even at the step before, like you need to have an ops and analytics person, whether that be rev ops combined or whether that just be marketing ops. Like you've got to have someone whose full-time job is on the tooling and analytics and working with the data team or with contractors to make sure that's implemented correctly.
Gotcha.
It's a huge amount of time. So yeah, and it becomes a mess if you don't do it right.
Cool. Well, listen, we'll be conscious of your time. We're a little past the hour point.
Yeah.
I feel like we've gotten a lot done. And maybe we'll take like 2 questions from the chat, which I'm going to look at now. Is, will we have access? Yes, we'll have access to the recording. Good overviews for email marketing. Webflow templates. So I'll ask a general question about just email, like lead generation on the B2B side. What point do you think it's useful for people to start cold? Like list buying versus more like network driven introductions or something? You have to still not
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit, but I'll take it from here. I think that if you're kind of doing the top-down sales motion and you have a high ACV and you know who your target audience is, which you should be doing this pretty early on. Like this is like between beta and flywheel, but you're going to get more specific about it over time. So definitely at flywheel building, maybe even at beta to try to get to that point of flywheel. So you're starting to do outbounds, and what comes along with outbound is list buying, is having great content to share in those things. And I think the mistake that people make is they just hire a bunch of SDRs, and it can be helpful to have one SDR to kind of test this stuff, but it also is helpful to think about, can make the emails still look like text-based emails, but you can start to do it on the marketing side more at scale to be able to, get volume and test what's working across. When you have SDRs, like the results are often pretty siloed, so you can't figure out what's working. So any sort of like emails that are working from one SDR, you can then go and like automate. So email marketing is a complement to SDRs, and often you can get a lot more efficiency out of email marketing if you have one SDR kind of testing and then building out the things that are working on the email side. And that's going to happen more like at the scaling stage. And if you're a product-led growth company on the B2B side, emails can become super important, because in addition to sort of your in-product sort of onboarding or things to drive engagement, you're going to have emails that correspond with those as well. And your email marketer should also be someone who understands product-led growth and is thinking about the interaction of things that are happening in product to drive you to be more engaged, and emails if you've fallen out of the product. So it's like a very close-knit thing.
Listen, thank you so much for letting us just totally vacuum up all the knowledge that's in your brain here and put it down. This has been super helpful. It's I think really, especially on the early side, it's just something that people struggle with so much. How do people find you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter, just my name, @Emily Kramer. It's probably the best place. And then we also write a newsletter with a lot of content kind of like this. It's just MKT, the letters MKT1.substack.com. Yeah, that should be the best way.
Cool. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It was fun. I've never kind of laid it all out like this in one document before, so it's fun to do.
We'll dress it up and make it fancy and get it back to you to look over.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Cool.
Have a good rest of
Thank
your day.
you.
Coming. Bye.